Now let's look into the mangrove ecosystems to explore the matters of concern for action learning towards more just and sustainable livelihoods. And how does Tonga fishing as a sustainable way of life align with mangrove ecology? And here, if we tune into the curriculum as around these sort of concerns, Tami describes how mangrove ecosystems have had a key part to play in the sustainable fishing practices of the Tonga. The mangrove trees provide wooden poles and branches to make long barriers in the shallows to guide large fish into the traps. They are so closely knitted that the big fish just swim along those lines. The ecosystem is also the food source that attracts large fish into the shallows on their way back to the sea after spawning. Today, mangrove areas are declining. They will need careful management for the sustainable harvesting of fish in the area, if that is to continue, as it has for the last 700 years. So the mangrove ecosystem is a key part of the story of sustainable fishing practices. And then, how are things today? We can see that there are declines, and we need to find out if more internet searches are possible. And anyone who'd like to go and visit Tami up in Cozy Bay, just contact me and I'll put you onto him so that he can organize something for you. It's also possible to then work out solutions. How are mangroves naturally restored? They are wonderful plants that naturally restore themselves in these very hostile, salty and wet areas. Can mangrove habitats as nurseries for fish be restored? And what can be done to resolve plastic pollution and to restore fish breeding areas in the estuaries and also the offshore reefs from where all the fish come into the estuary to breed? So this looking at heritage and looking at the way things are really does give us a depth of memory of the way things have been sustainably done in Africa, so that we can look at, well, how can we face the problems in the present so that our imaginations can take us into looking at better ways of doing things together so that we're able to sustain these natural ecosystems as producers of food for families and for communities. So Tami described to us how the fish coming into the bay from the sea use the deep water channels to swim up the lakes to spawn. He noted how on their return after spawning they were hungry and leave the deep water to feed in the shallows, particularly in the mangrove areas where a lot of fish, fingerlings, are under the roots of the mangroves. The mangroves are the shallow water nurseries for fingerlings, baby fish. It is near these shallows where the fish trap walls of mangrove branches guide the large fish into the traps as they swim into the side to feed. There are 3 species of mangroves: the red mangroves in the deeper water, the black mangroves in the shallow water, and the white mangroves at the edge of the estuary. The red have exposed prop roots that are a natural refuge for fingerlings. The black have knee roots and many fiddler crab holds in the mud, and the white are usually in the drier tidal limits. Together, these trees and other plants form a unique saltwater ecosystem that is rich in food and is a nursery for many fish species. They also supply most of the materials needed for the Tonga to construct the fish traps that feed their families. Here, Tami is harvesting the branches of the red mangrove. Notice the close spiky branches that will become the walls of the fish traps to guide the large fish into the circular trap with its reed walls. The secret for the sustainability of fish traps is how they are positioned in the shallows where the fish returning to the sea feed. The estuarine fringes have reeds, grasses and mangroves, areas that are rich in microscopic life and include crabs and whelks. And here you've got the whelks up a tree, you've got the fiddler crab and the yucca crab. They eat the small organisms and they produce all of the microscopic life that is needed for fish to breed. The tiny little fish fingerlings under the mangroves. And of course they are food for the kingfishers. And this is the pied kingfisher and other birds in the rich mangrove ecosystems of the bay. And underneath the water are all of the food for the returning large fish that are trapped in the fish traps. So the mangrove estuaries have many other creatures that would be interesting to look at. And this is a hands-on book that is available on the internet that you can use to identify many of these organisms as you explore in much more detail the intricacies of the mangrove ecosystems. And the estuary and the mangroves of Causey Bay are interesting ecosystems to study for an understanding of how the Tsonga have successfully lived in the area for 700 years. The sustainability challenges of the Tsonga at Causey Bay can help us to begin to touch these memories of African sustainability and feel the future across possibilities for the imagination to be able to work out better ways of doing things together by restoring the ecosystems that we all need.